Any thoughts over the weekend about?
Well, I noted this was going to happen. I mean, economics matter to these companies, you know, to investors at least. And these are huge losses, and it's a question they're trying to do very hard. It's interesting in Silicon Valley to say, oh, this is Amazon, which it's not. Or this is Google, which it definitely is not, because Google was very profitable when it went public and was a very promising company in that regard. And so there's a lot of people online, tech people, that are trying to do those excuses. The fact of the matter is it's a really difficult business. It doesn't mean that it's not a great brand. It doesn't mean that it's not a promising area. It's just the pricing is really hard, given how low their prices are, and consumers have been getting the benefit of that. And then secondly, there's a competitor in the market that's keeping those prices down. And then there's drivers, and then there's blank.
That's all. That sounds so rational. Yeah. Where was that viewpoint when they were being valued at, we thought, 100
Gosh,
plus?
Carl, I was saying that, but okay.
Yeah.
But I'm not an
Is there bitterness among those who got in at higher levels?
No, it's the Saudis with SoftBank. You know, it's anyone that got in after 2015, essentially. I mean, that's the thing. These companies, they can't fight gravity. I don't know how to, you know, they can't fight the gravity of these problems. And even though there's a great CEO in charge, Kara Swisher, the guys who run Lyft are terrific, it's difficult. And you wonder, maybe they should merge. I mean, that's another possibility, is the two of them should merge.
Is
even
Uber,
more losses.
I think investors need to consider, is Uber a bellwether or is it an anomaly? Because 6-7 weeks ago, before Lyft went public, people were talking about a $120 billion valuation on Uber. Right now, it's about half that, at around $63
billion. It's investors we're talking about that.
Yeah, but
they're
investors, yes, but are also invested in other things. And so have the value of some of these other things also dropped by half in the real world, which they haven't yet
No,
entered?
They're different businesses. You have to look at them differently, the way you have to look at big tech differently.
But Airbnb, I mean, some of these other companies that there's big hype and big money behind, WeWork, you know, also have models
that's a different story.
Yeah,
but no, Airbnb reminds me more of
one.
Pinterest. It's like one of these promising companies. There's not a major competitor to it. It's a really interesting area, but it's still challenged economically. But they're not challenged. No one's challenged economically like Uber. I mean, billions.
Well, how about WeWork?
I don't know enough about it, but it seems lofty. Lofty is what I would say. And again, is it a real estate company? It's not an internet company.
Can we take the argument that private equity is sophisticated, savvy, rigorous, and throw that in the trash? I mean,
No, because they need to get, the money's got to go somewhere. It's like washing all over the globe.
So there's just too much, literally too much dry powder.
The Saudis have got all this money. They got to run it somewhere.
Well, when I've got extra money, I don't set it on fire.
Yeah, but you did buy that green egg and never use it. So I don't know. Whatever. Right. It's just it's problematic. I'm teasing. It's problematic from an economic point of view, and they've got to figure out how to get these other businesses, and they have a short amount of time to do that. And so they're just going to have to accept that this is the price. And retail investors aren't being suckers here, I guess.
No.
That's what's happening.
I mean, that's the silver lining here, isn't it?
Well, good. That's good. And also these trade things, it's just like a bad time, too.
Well, and so I think that sort of begs the question, you know, one of the things we've been focused on is, does this throw cold water on the IPO pipeline when you see how Uber's performed, how Lyft's performed, but also what does it do to those future investments by venture capitalists and the like, you know, in those next startups?
Stop making such massive valuations. I think that's what it is. I think these valuations, it's because there's so much money, these valuations go straight upwards, and then, you know, you can't make economic sense of it. And it doesn't mean, again, that it's not a great, interesting business. It's just, what is the economics of it?
A friend of mine tried to argue that the core app, riding in cars, will be to Uber what books were to Amazon.
Okay.
You think it turns out to be more about logistics and freight and...
Okay, but then the minute they put on self-driving cars, what is their advantage? What is their, you know, they are the reservation system for self-driving cars, really. The two of them together are the reservation system. The question is, what if, when we get to autonomous cars, doesn't Google have somewhat an advantage here? Do you really need this reservation? Anyway, there's a price for it. It's just, what is the price? And that's always the case.
Does Google know who's driving for Lyft and Uber in essence because they've got Google Maps? I mean, if they want to get in on this game because they've got their own autonomous driving technology through Waymo, I mean, they know where all the cars are on the road because people are logged into Google Maps.
I mean, Google to me is very interesting.
So is that even an advantage for Uber if they're going up against Waymo?
You know, it depends on when we get to it. That's going to be decades and decades hence. You know what I mean? It's not tomorrow, but it does say there's an advantage to Google in this kind of stuff. It seems like eventually.
Let's turn to Facebook.
Sure.
Shares under pressure this morning following the call of co-founder Chris Hughes to break up the tech giant. Facebook's VP for Global Affairs and Communications responded over the weekend, telling CNN, quote, chopping a great American success story into bits won't stop foreign election interference or poison spreading online. This as the Supreme Court allows users to sue the Apple App Store over antitrust concerns. Shares of Apple down 5%. Who do you think if you had to pick a breakup candidate?
Oh, Facebook. Google.
Did Hughes move the needle, do you think,
he
week?
definitely, everyone's been talking about this.
Yeah.
You know, we've been talking about this. But it's just when a founder does it, it creates attention to it. I did a pretty long podcast with him on Friday where he was more articulate about the reasons he did it and more clear. You know, I think it just calls attention to the same thing. And then, of course, all the political people are going to jump on. They never were here before, so whatever. I'm very cynical about their motivations, whether they're going to do anything. But Elizabeth Warren certainly was here early on with these ideas. I'm not a breakup. I think breakups also, I can't believe I'm saying that. It's the wrong issue. It's the wrong focus. I think there's lots of ways through fines, through regulation, and through opening up Facebook's data. That would be amazing. That would create lots of cool companies. So all kinds of stuff.
What do you expect in terms of the FTC and the fine that's being negotiated there? And not just the fine, but also the details around what that settlement looks like.
Again, I've said it's a parking ticket, so it's just a question of what they add on to it, what the guardrails are. But they break through the guardrails last time, so they have to be. They can't be made of paper mache. They have to be made of something really substantive, so Facebook pays attention. There's no compelling reason for Facebook to do anything, given how light the government touch is. So.
On Apple, the Supreme Court has basically said that Apple can be sued for the pricing on the App Store, even though Apple doesn't set the prices of every app. The developer gets to set the price. But the plaintiffs have been arguing, hey, the prices are too high. Apple's taking this big cut. It's not fair. The Supreme Court said, go ahead, had that argument in court. How much of a risk really is that for Apple? Because, I mean, I guess the court could say you have to allow people to get their iPhone apps from some other source, but I don't know how likely.
It's not a monopoly. It's really, I'm not a legal scholar here, so it just seems like I don't think that Apple's a monopoly, but other people do who are under it. They have to be. I mean, it's a monopoly for certain people, say in Manhattan, everybody has an iPhone, but the question is, you know, Google,
you could
Android.
get an Uber app on Android if you wanted to. It's like arguing that McDonald's has a monopoly over quarter pounders.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the law, but it seems like focus. These are developers who don't want to hand over 30%, which I get it. I get the idea. So maybe Apple has to think really hard about that. The Spotify case is more interesting, I think. And so the question is, how much power does it really have? It's like Amazon. How much commerce power does it really have? It's a very small amount of retail, but it's also so large in terms of where everything's going. So,
yeah, I mean, incredibly, some of the stuff in the Journal today about Amazon getting into failed malls, and turning that into industrial space.
Good for them.
You think so? I mean, tons of room near big transportation hubs, near population centers.
Sense. What can't Jeff Bezos do? I'm just saying, it's just he's a really interesting and innovative entrepreneur.
Lunar landings are next.
Why not take advantage?
I think he would like that to be the case.
Maybe he could get Uber stock up. I don't know. Who knows?
Which I guess goes back to that point, right, about whether Uber should be looked at as Amazon or not, and this idea of moving goods around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Overall, just a mood check in the Valley, whether it's Uber, whether it's the Supreme Court today, whether it's trade. Has it changed markedly, or are these guys...
They're very victimized. They're very upset about things. You know, it's so funny to watch them all, like, puff their chest out on... If you watch Twitter on Friday, they're all like, thank you, you're so great, thank you so much, sir. It was, like, ridiculous to watch.
About what?
About the Uber thing. I remember years ago, Uber Cab, like, they were, like, all congratulating each other on their fantastic... The only one who was great was Mark Schuster from Los Angeles, who I love, who was like, here's the letter I turned down the Uber money. Ha ha, I'm an idiot. I love that. That was fun. Otherwise, they're very upset about being attacked.
Right.
Yeah.
Look, it looks like we've got the market at session lows right now. 615 is what we're down on the Dow. How much are the China trade talk and the tensions that are ratcheting up there going to affect Silicon Valley?
You know, if you're Apple, sure. It depends on the company you are. I think Apple's got to be concerned with this. Maybe Boeing, some others that have that kind of business. And Boeing's got its own issues.